Chempakans. Hi, welcome to our next installation of our webinar series. And we're really, really happy to have somebody here today who is an old Chempakan with us as well. Firstly, hi everyone, students, teachers, and parents. It's really nice to see all of you. And we are really glad to be able to bring old Chempakans back with us to share things, learnings that they've had over the years. Okay, so today our guest is Miss Marisha Naz. She is from Cempaka, Cheras, class of 2006. She was a member of Helang. She was actually also the house captain of Helang, as well as head prefect for that year. So it's super great to have her back with us. And today she's going to be talking about, firstly, her journey after Cempaka. So her journey sort of like into the world of finance and into the world of startups as well. And she's going to tell you a little bit about that. But then she's also going to talk to you about financial literacy and what that means for today's youth. So what you can do and what skills you can build in order to make sure that you can succeed for the rest of your life, right? So super happy to have you. Please put any questions that you have into the chat on the side of this page, and then we will get to these questions at the end of the session. So I'll let Marisha take it away and introduce herself and go. Okay, Marisha.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Really good afternoon. It's super nice to be here. As Crystal mentioned, I'm a very proud ex-Chempakan, and it's always nice to come back and share a little bit about the work I do and my journey post-Chempaka. So I hope all of you can see my short presentation, which I prepared for this session. So it's really going to be covering financial literacy for the youth. But before we go into that, I thought I would give you a bit of background about myself. So hi everybody, I'm Marisha. I will talk to you a little bit about my post-Chempaka journey, which is basically across 2 degrees, 4 different jobs in 5 different countries, and how I basically landed as to where I am today. And I do a lot of work in the financial literacy space. So before we start, I always love starting with fun facts, just to kind of keep things light. So a few fun facts is when I was in Cempaka Cheras in Form 1, I joined in Form 1, I was the very first batch of students in the Cempaka Cheras campus. So there was, I think, the North Hall didn't exist, it was only the South Hall, the swimming pool was half filled, and we had the main building. And so I've really seen the school grow over the years, and it's extremely beautiful to see how wonderful it has expanded. Another fun fact is, when Cempaka started doing the annual productions, one of the first few productions that we did in a very big scale was The Lion King. Unfortunately, I don't have very great singing abilities, but I loved acting and dancing, so I was one of the hyenas in The Lion King. Post Cempaka, one of the things that I love to do is travel. So I've been backpacking and currently hitting 52 countries. Pretty proud of that. And one thing that has not changed since I was in school is I love sports a lot. Back then in school, all the swimming gala, sports day, everything, and it's something that I still do today. So I'm a competitive sailor, and I sail, various places across the world. So that's a few fun facts about myself. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about my journey in terms of where I started after graduation of high school and to where I am now. So as Crystal mentioned, I finished Cempaka and Cempaka Cheras in 2006. That's me and 2 of my best friends when I was in high school, which I'm still really good friends with today. I didn't really know what I wanted to do after high school, but I knew what I did not want to do. I knew I didn't want to go into the sciences. I knew I didn't really want to go into engineering. I knew I wasn't really the artsy kind. So I decided, it might be a good idea to do economics because everybody says it's quite a good general degree to do. Gives you a lot of options. So I applied for various scholarships, got rejected from a bunch of them, eventually got a Bank Negara scholarship, and went to the UK to study at the University College of London. So that's us on our graduation day. Upon graduation, I returned to Malaysia and I worked in Bank Negara for about 4 years doing financial policy. I worked across various national policies, which was really great. Met a lot of really awesome people, did a lot of meaningful work. On the side of my job, I used to volunteer to teach financial literacy to Bank Negara volunteers, where we would go out to low-cost government housing areas, and I would interact with people of all sorts of walk of life, and teach them how to be more financially literate. Um, After 4 years at the Central Bank of Malaysia at Bank Negara, I really enjoyed my time and I was doing really well. But again, the same theory of I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I did not want to do. And I love economics, but I love the more behavioral side of economics, like how humans work, all the biasness. And I wasn't really into the more traditional forms of economics. So then in 2016, I kind of thought I know what I don't want to do, but I really don't know what I want to do. So then I took a bit of a career gap year where I worked in 2 different startups, one in Indonesia and one in Hong Kong. So in Indonesia, I worked for Grab. This was in 2017. They were still growing. Indonesia was a very new market for them. So I moved to Jakarta and worked on integrating financial products into the app for their drivers. And then I moved to Hong Kong to work for an insurance startup to learn a little bit more about how do you build digital products, how do you build websites, because, that wasn't my skill set before. And then I decided, I have a lot of experience in the policy making world and now in the startup world. But what I really lacked was some business experience. So I decided to do an MBA, Masters of Business Administration. I got accepted into the University of Oxford. So I went back to the UK and did an MBA there for a year. That's me on my graduation day. And during my MBA, I met another girl. She's from the US, and we both really bonded over how we have throughout our careers worked with people from different walks of life. And what we noticed is people give a lot of attention to your physical health, but not really to your financial health. Like you go to the gym to get fit and be healthy, but what do you do to make sure that you have a healthy financial life? We realized this was lacking somewhere. And because traditionally you don't really learn this in school as well. So we both bonded over this fact and we started a startup called Butterfly FX. Butterfly FX is an enterprise and we champion financial literacy, mostly in vulnerable communities, but we work across the board. In addition to the startup I started, I also landed a job with Amazon. So I'm currently sitting in Luxembourg right now, which is their European headquarters. And at Amazon, I'm a product manager. So I build brands and businesses for Amazon-owned brands in the healthcare and nutrition space. And I manage their European business for this. So this is my journey after high school to where I am now. You can see it started off pretty linear, and then there are a lot of different branches, and I've kind of landed here now in 2020 with, I would say, 2 jobs. One running a startup of my own, and one working for one of the biggest companies in the world. And I love both of them. I work very hard, but it has been a very fulfilling journey. So one of the questions I get asked is why I started the startup Butterfly FX. And it's mostly from my previous work experiences from when I was working in Bank Negara and also in the 2 startups in different countries. I noticed the same thing. People make a lot of bad financial choices. And when we look at the data, worldwide, only 1 in 3 adults are actually financially literate. And this really, really shocked me. And it goes back to the fact that traditionally, and this is not just in Malaysia, but around the world, we're not taught a lot about money or your relationship with money in school. So you grow up with habits without inculcating, healthy financial habits from a very young age. So it's very hard to change when you're an adult. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation today because, for young people or their parents tuning in, it's really pivotal to have this seeds planted in your mind from a very young age. And the last reason why I started Butterfly FX was that even if you Google or you read up about financial education online these days, it doesn't take into account that humans are, human. We're imperfect, we're sometimes lazy, we're forgetful, we're pleasure seeking. And financial education really has to take into context that it's not just the knowledge, but whether you can apply the knowledge. Everybody knows you have to save, but it's super hard to actually do it. So at Butterfly FX, we use a lot of behavioral science and behavioral economics to nudge people into taking better financial choices. So the question I get all the time when I talk about financial literacy is, what does it mean to be rich? I get this question from everybody. from vulnerable communities I work with all the way to very wealthy people. And people generally ask this question, I want to be rich. And what I will say is we've done a lot of research and we've leveraged the research that has been done elsewhere to see people who are financially literate, what it means to them. And let me share this with you. For people who are financially literate, what they generally say is that it's not about being rich, but it's about having a good financial well-being. And this means having the financial security and financial freedom of choice currently in your life and also for the future. And what does this really mean? Generally, it's four main things. The first is having control over your day-to-day and month-to-month expenses. The second is having the capacity to absorb any financial shocks in your life. The third is on track to meet your financial goals, whether that's to go on holiday, buy a new house, save up for, a new pair of shoes, whatever it could be. And the last is having the financial freedom to make the choices that allow you to enjoy life. Everybody has different things that they really enjoy doing in life, different hobbies, different family sizes. And, do you really have the financial freedom to allow you to enjoy all the things that you enjoy? And it's really important that we make a distinction. It's not about how much money you earn, but it's really about your overall financial well-being, which makes you a financially literate person. And the last line here is extremely important, if you can read it here, which is people with the same level of income, financial experiences, or education can have very different levels of financial well-being. I think one of the biggest myths is that if I earn more money, I'll be more financially well off. But actually, this is really not the case. I've worked with people who earn a lot of money, but they don't manage it very well, and so they're not very financially well off. And the opposite is true as well. I've worked with people who earn significantly less, but they're much better at managing their money, so they have a much better financial well-being. So a paradigm shift would be, as a young person or as a parent or as a teacher out there, the question we should really be asking is, what does it mean to achieve financial wellness? And honestly, the theory is not hard. So let's start with the basics. There are really two components to your financial wellness. Now think of this like a big bathtub. The first is how much money comes in, how much you earn, and then the second part is how much money goes out, which is how much you spend or how much needs to go out. And if you think of it like a bathtub, you can keep putting water in, but then you also have the drain and there's water coming out. And to maximize your financial wellness is you want to maximize the amount of water in the bathtub. This is the simplest way I can sort of explain it to you. And we'll go into how you can do that. But in theory, this is basically the two components that you should think of. Now let's look at the first component, which is how much money comes in. And think of it like turning on a tap and the water coming into the bathtub. It's really two things. The first is how much time you have. Because essentially when you get a job or when you start a business or when you do anything that earns you money, what are you doing? You're basically selling your time. And how valuable your time is, that is how much money you'll get. So the key objective is to really become a very valuable person, either through your skill sets, your knowledge, or your experience, so that you get paid more for the same amount of time that you put in. Some people, they work for 1 hour, they get 5 ringgit. Some people work for 1 hour, they get 100 ringgit. It all depends of what skills you have and what value you bring to society or to the company you work for, or if you're starting a business, to your customers. And the second part is, after you finish selling your time, the second part is you really need to make money work for you. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. And these are really just the two components you need to remember. And I think a lot of people focus on the time aspect, so what job I should have, what kind of business I should start. But a lot of people don't really focus on the fact that you really need money to work for you in the long term for you to get financial security, because that means you can spend less time earning money and let the money work for you on its own. Now, this might be a bit abstract to younger people. So if you're below the age of 20, so if you're in high school or just finishing primary school, the biggest thing that a young person can do in school to maximize both the time and making money work for you is increasing your earning potentials and getting into the habit of savings. As a young person, this is the biggest thing that you can do that will basically guarantee financial wellness in the future. Earning potential, several traditional means of earning potential is having a good education, going to a good university, getting good grades. But also, I think I would urge you to think of non-traditional things like skill sets beyond what you learn in your syllabus. Are you a good communicator? Do you have other digital skills that you can pick up? Can you code? Do you have performing arts skills that you can also sort of sell and make money from? Do whatever you can when you're young to increase your earning potential, because when you're older, you have a lot less time to actually invest in this. So I think the fact that all of you are in Cempaka, you're really lucky. I found a lot of things that I did when I was in school that actually helped me with my long-term earning potential. One of it is definitely being involved in things like debate, performing arts, because it allows me to be a very confident person and allows me to, be able to present and talk and articulate my thoughts very well. And you'll notice that that's actually a really important skill in the future. We used to have this iMovie competition. I don't know if you still have that in school, but that was great because actually I do still a lot of video editing today, and that's one of the core skills that I use to start my startups, to start the startup, where I use my video editing skills on iMovie, which is exactly the same program I used when I was back in school, to make videos, and then I sell them on financial literacy. So that's one example of when you're young, really develop skill sets that allow you to increase your earning potential. The second part is really get into the habit of savings. And I'll go into this a little bit later, but this is definitely something you can do as a young person, and if there are parents listening, this is also something I would encourage you to foster in your children as a habit. Now, the other part of the financial wellness is how much money goes out, which is your expenditure. As a young person, maybe you don't have a lot of this at the moment, but as you grow older, there are really two types of expenditure. The first is anticipated expenditure, and this would be things like, the food that you eat every day, your rent, your food, your rent. And the second part is protection for unexpected expenditure. And this could be if you got into an accident, if you have a medical problem, if you have a family member that passed away. These are things that you cannot control, but are part of life, and they do happen. So you need to prepare for them. And going back to making this relevant for young people, because you might not have a lot of expenditure right now, but what you can do to train yourself is first, every time you want to buy something with your allowance, think, is this a need or is this a want? Do I really need this? Or is this something that I just want? A need are things basic things you need to live, right? Your food, your school books, and things that you do to invest in yourself. A want is usually something that you only want it because maybe it's fun, or you just really want something. Other people have it. So every time you want to buy something, ask yourself, is this a need or is this a want? Most people know they have to do this, but very few people actually do it. And if you can start to do this when you're younger, it really makes things a lot easier when you grow up. The second is delayed gratification. This is super difficult, and humans are imperfect in this sense that we always prefer things now. We want things now. But if you can practice delaying your gratification, saying, okay, it's okay if I don't get something now, but I'll get it in the future. This is also a very, very good skill to have, to build as a young person, because it will help you a lot as you grow into your adult phases. So there are really three parts to financial wellness. Once you understand this bathtub theory of there's what comes in and what goes out, the first one is you want to make sure what comes in is more than what goes out. Some people call this living below your means. And one way you can do this is definitely save before you spend. So once you get money in, before you even, let the plug out for your expenditure, is take aside a chunk and save that. Like I said again, very simple theory, very hard to do in practice. But if you can do this, you are already better than 70% of the people out there, because most people cannot actually do this very well. I know it sounds simple, but it's true. I've worked with lots of people, and people really, really struggle doing this. So the younger you can start doing this, the easier it's going to be. So now, once you kind of make sure what comes in is more than what's going out, you want to move from maximizing your time to maximizing making money work for you. And you want to reduce unanticipated expenditure. Because anticipated expenditure is something easy, you generally have control over it. And this is the second part of financial wellness, which is after you make sure that whatever comes in is more than what goes out, the most important thing is to save a little bit of money for an emergency fund. This is, it will differ, the amount will differ for different people, but in theory, this is very good to have because it means that if you lose your job or if something happens to you, you have a cushion or you have an emergency buffer that you can tap on. Worldwide, most people have less than $500 as an emergency fund, and this is very low. So the younger you can start building your emergency fund, the better you'll be when you're older. When you're older, this might not be super relevant for those of you in high school or primary school right now, but another way to protect yourself against unanticipated expenditure is to buy insurance, either medical insurance, personal accident insurance, or life insurance. And this is something that you can look to when you are older, but when you're younger, the easiest thing to do is save up for an emergency fund. Now, the third part, and this, if you don't remember anything I tell you today, please, this is the most important slide of the day, which is you need to make money work for you. This concept, I believe, is what differentiates someone who is financially literate versus someone who is financially illiterate. Because most people know the other stuff intuitively. They might not know it as a theory, but they know it intuitively. This part is probably the part that I wish we learned more in school when we were younger, because it really makes a big difference in your lifetime. So there are two things you should know. First, if you save money and you keep it somewhere, you earn interest on this money. So you earn money just for keeping money, and this is called interest. The second thing is you also earn money on things you own. So if you buy assets, things like stocks, or if you invest in a business, and if that asset does well, you get a return. Now, whatever you get from the right side of this slide, either interest or return, if you then put it back into your bathtub, that same money will now generate more interest and more returns. And this is what we call compounding interest. This is the most, I don't have a lot of time in this session to go through it in detail, but this is by far the most underrated financial concept there is. And if more people understood this, I think they would make different financial choices. Most people focus on the time part. When I go here, most people focus on time to increase the money they earn, but most very wealthy people actually focus on the bottom part, which is making money work for you through compounding interest. And I would urge you to, when you're young, make sure you can make yourself of someone of valuable, so when you sell your time, you can sell it for more money than less money. But then once you have your bathtub full, make the money work for you, so that over time you can spend less time earning money and basically relax a little bit more and make your money work for you. So if you have time after this session, I would highly encourage you to go on YouTube, Google compounding interest, and learn more about it, because this is definitely the most underrated part of financial literacy, which most people don't understand. So I'll just go through a very quick example of me. So on the left is me finishing high school in Cempaka in 2006, and on the right is me today, 2020. And I want to show you the power of compounding interest. So if the day I finished high school, if I saved 100 ringgit, and let's say I got 5% as either a return or an interest by keeping it in the bank or investing it, today what I would have is close to 200 ringgit, 198. By not doing anything, I don't have to invest extra time, extra effort. By not doing anything, I've almost doubled my money. Now, if I did the same thing at the end of high school, I put aside 100 ringgit at the same return, but every year I add 10 ringgit. Now what I would have is I would have 400 ringgit. And you can see that instead of the money going from 100 ringgit to 200 ringgit, it has now gone 4 times up to 400 ringgit. And again, I'm not doing anything. I just saved the money in a return that was generating about 5%, and I added 10 ringgit every year. Now let's look at the last example. Same thing, finished high school, started saving with 100 ringgit, but this time, every year I added 100 ringgit to my savings. And in 2020 today, I would have 2,255 ringgit. And all of this is not doing anything extra. So this is the example of making money work for you. I didn't have to get a new job for this. I didn't have to do anything extra. I just kind of put it in a savings account or put it in an investment and kept it there and didn't touch the money for this many number of years. So this is an example of making money work for you, and it's an extremely important thing that I wish more younger people would know. So that's the theory. It's really three things. And let me recap it really fast. The first is make sure whatever goes into the bathtub is more than whatever is going out. Try and once you have a good bathtub, good enough water in your bathtub, you try and minimize for things coming out of your bathtub, right? And this is creating an emergency fund. And when you're older, you can think of insurance. And the third part is you want to maximize more money coming into the bathtub, but not from selling your time, but by making the existing money in the bathtub work for you better. So this is great in theory. Some of you might already know this. And I want to give you some tips for reality of how you make this actually work for you in practice. And I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I will put it there. But this comes from my experience of working with, I've worked about in 10 years now in the finance industry, and what I've seen worked and doesn't work for people. So this is what I wish I knew when I was your age. So the first is start early, start often. If you can save today, and it doesn't matter, when you get your pao during Chinese New Year or Hari Raya, start saving that money instead of spending it, because you will thank yourself many, many years from now. So I wanted to give you an example that if I saved 100 ringgit of my Hari Raya money when I was 15, and let's say there was a 5% interest or return, at the age of 20, I would have got 134 ringgit. If I started 1 year later at the age of 16, I would have got 127 ringgit. Now, I illustrated how it goes on, where if I started later and later in life, how much money I'm missing out on. So you can really see the younger you start, the better you have. And I've put in a very small amount of money here, which is 100 ringgit. But when you talk about bigger sums, this really becomes quite a big number. So, if there are parents on here, if you're listening, definitely, I would encourage you to encourage your children to start early, start saving early. If you can open a children's savings account, and showing them every year how much the money grows without them doing anything is something that really sticks for you for the rest of your life. The second part is keep it super simple, or KISS. So one of the biggest assumptions in kind of the theory that I spoke about earlier is that people know what to invest in or what to save in. So there are a whole host of things that you can either, once you save your money in that bathtub, what you do with the bathtub, a whole host of things that you can do with it. The first is you can save it in a fixed deposit account. This is basically a savings account with a bank. Every bank has it. And it's generally pretty safe. And when I say safe, it means that over time, you don't really lose your money. There is some types of investments over time, and you can see at the bottom of the slide where the risk increases. So you actually have a risk of losing your money. So one of the questions I always get from people is, isn't it better if I just save my money and not invest it? Because if I invest it, I have a chance of losing it. Well, the thing is, if you don't invest your money, you will have a 100% chance of losing it as well, because over time, the cost of things increase generally. And, every year, on average, in Malaysia at least, the cost of goods increased by about 2.5%. And this is super general. It's called the inflation rate. But it really differs on different things like food, houses. We see generally prices increase a lot. So if you just keep your money in the bank, in a non-fixed deposit, let's say, your value of your money today versus 10 years will be less anyway. So you will lose money. So the best thing to do is actually to invest it. Now, what you invest it in really depends on your risk profile. So the simplest thing is a fixed deposit, like I mentioned. My favorite, and this is what I personally do, is a low-cost ETF fund. ETFs are exchange traded funds. They're like index funds. They basically track the whole stock market, and they're easy. You don't have to do much. They are low cost, and for me, I don't like to spend a lot of time managing investments and like passively doing it, because my time is also valuable, and I do get a good income from selling my time to my job. So I try to minimize the time that I spend on making my money work for me. But generally, as you go down this list, you can go into things that give you a higher return. So managed funds, buying your own stocks, going into real estate, starting a business or investing in a business, or going into cryptocurrency. Some of these things do give you a higher return, but it comes with a higher risk, and you need a much higher level of understanding of these financial products to actually go into them. So you still need to spend time to learn about them. So, if you don't have time, if you don't feel like you're someone who wants to learn about these things, the first two are a pretty okay option. And actually, the low-cost ETF funds are what most people in the financial literacy space advise the average Joe, the average person out there. Of course, if you want to become a bit more sophisticated and spend a bit more time, you can go down this list and try other things. But if you don't have time and you want to keep it super simple, what the data shows us is over a long period of time, so over a horizon of 20 to 30 years, the best way to achieve financial wellness and financial freedom is to save your money and put it in a low-cost ETF fund. This is what the data shows. So if you believe research, that's what you should do. But of course, if you want to outperform the average person, you can look into things which are below here. But like I said, there is a level of risk, and you need to spend time learning about all of this. So the next tip I would have for all of you is do not trust yourself. We rely on so much self-motivation, and I believe every person, if you're super motivated to do something, you will do it. But the problem is we don't feel motivated every day. Sometimes you wake up and you just feel lazy, or you had a bad day, and you don't want to make your daily mood swings affect your financial wellness. So I would suggest don't rely on your self-motivation. This might be counterintuitive from, motivational books or anything like that you read, but this is the truth. As you grow older, you have more responsibilities, you have more things to do, and you have more things to remember. So relying on your self-motivation can be dangerous. So automate as much as possible. One of the best things you can do for those of you who will start working soon is automatic salary deduction to save. And one thing that we like to say in Amazon is good intentions are not good enough. You need to create good systems and good habits, because this means that you can stop actively thinking about it and it becomes an autopilot in your life. And the less you have to think about it and the more it becomes a habit, it means that it's just part of your everyday life. You don't have to put in effort to do these things. And the reason why I tell you this is because with a high degree of financial wellness, actually you can enjoy life more. If you can automate your financial position, you don't have to keep so much brain energy on that as much. The last one is more of a warning, which is stay away from get rich quick. You'll see this everywhere these days. They're on YouTube, on Instagram, where people say that, oh, you just have to do this one thing and you'll get financial freedom. It's always good to learn and understand different things that people are doing in the world. But definitely, if someone is selling you something where you just have to do this one thing and you earn so much money, highly likely it's a scam. Or the second, if it's not a scam, it is actually possible, but it probably takes you a lot more time than they claim it should be. So, things like some people would ask you to invest in certain initiatives, or there are a lot of people who say, oh yeah, like start an online business, I can make a lot of money. But always ask, how much time does it take? Because remember, at the end of the day, there are two parts to earning money, which is your time and making money work for you. And if these get rich quick initiatives cost you a lot of time, you're better off just doing a job that pays you really well. And last, if it was really easy, everybody would do it. A rule of thumb that I tell people, or the communities that I work with, is if anybody promises you more than a 5% return, I would ask a lot more questions. I'm not saying that it's not possible. It's definitely possible if you work very hard. But I would just say be a little bit more ask more questions, and definitely be very careful whenever anybody pitches anything to you on around this. So what can you do today as a young person in high school or in primary school? Because a lot of this might not apply to you exactly today, especially maybe the investing piece, but there are definitely things you can do today. So the first is, when you ask your parents for a gift, or when you're at, or parents, when you are giving something to your child, instead of the actual product, ask for a stock in that company. So instead of asking for an iPhone or Nike shoes or a MacBook, ask for one stock in that company and keep that, or give that to your kid. And this is great because from a very young age, you can see what it means to actually own or invest in something. And that the earlier you start, the more familiar you'll be with it as you grow old. The second is to practice compounding interest at home. So what you can do is you can take 2 jars and put 10 cents in one and 10 cents in the other. And every time you put 10 cents in one, put an additional 10% and think of that as your return. And so if you have 2 coins in that jar, every time you add more coins every day, add 2 more coins and then add 3 more coins. And that's a really good illustration of how compound interest is over time. So you can compare the 2 jars to see how compound interest works. Because it's quite a complicated topic, but the earlier you understand it as a teenager or as a child, trust me, you'll make very different financial decisions when you grow older. The third is practicing wants and needs with your allowance. So if you get allowance from your parents and you're buying things, always ask yourself, is this a want or is this a need? I would also encourage you to start saving your allowance. So before you start spending it, save a portion of it. And it doesn't matter if it's a small amount, it could be just 2 ringgit, but it's more of getting in the habit. And it goes back to what I said about don't trust yourself and create good systems and habits. The reason why you start this when you're young is not because you think you'll become a millionaire by 20. It's because it will become a really good financial habit for you when you're younger, so that when you're older, things like this just become a routine for you. Social media is very popular these days. So if you have TikTok or if you have Instagram, search the hashtag financial literacy and start following some accounts. If you're already on social media, it's a great way to consume better content. So search for financial literacy accounts, and there are a lot of tips and tricks there which basically talk about what I've spoken about today, but they remind you more and more and you get to learn more. And the last is, as a young person in school, invest in yourself. Make sure you keep investing in the skills to increase the value of your time, so that when you sell 1 hour of your time in the future, you're not selling it for 5 ringgit, but you can sell it for maybe 50 ringgit, 5,000 ringgit, 500,000 ringgit. That is possible. So it all depends on how valuable you are as a person. And this is by far the greatest thing you can do when you're a young person. So I guess I'll end with a quote, which is, we are what we repeatedly do. So excellence, and in this case, financial wellness, is not really an act, but is a habit that you sustain over time. And this is why it's really important to start when you're young. So I'll pause there and kind of, I guess this is a good time to segue into some Q&A. Happy to take questions about anything, about either my experience, my startup that I started, or the whole host of financial literacy topics that I just explained.
Okay, wow. Firstly, Marisha, thank you so much. I think that was just an incredible wealth of information, and just so much good stuff in such a short amount of time. And I think it was super easy to understand. Although I think some kids maybe won't really know what a fixed deposit is, but it's okay, they can do research on that. I think a lot of this is also about building these habits to learn all these things. And firstly, yeah, thank you so much. It was such a great explanation, and I think it's a great bedrock for sort of preparing students to succeed in the future. And I personally learned a lot, and I think I need to go home and think about some of my own financial decisions and try to reconsider them. And I think that's also true sort of for everyone, right? And that it doesn't, of course it's better if you start things young, but then sort of even later on in life, you have a little bit more money to play with. But maybe you have to also, with money comes responsibility as well. So I think, having to think about different ways of managing that money too. A couple of people actually Puan Aimi on the chat says, hello, Marisha, always so proud of you. So I think a lot of your former teachers are here watching and, very pleased and like very impressed with what you're showing us. I think that one question that I do have is sort of like, it's the 21st century. And I think that, for example, the financial products like you mentioned, cryptocurrencies, things like Bitcoin and all that stuff, with sort of like this new age of financial technology with fintech, what are some other things that people need to know? And like, what more advice do you have?
Right. So I think I would still go back to the advice I have, which is keep it super simple generally. If you're a geek, like me, and you really, really want to learn a little bit more, there's a lot you can learn, and it's endless, right? But I think most people, I wouldn't say everybody's hobby in life is finding out more about financial products, right? People have other hobbies, sports, family. And you really want to make sure that your financial life can maximize the things that you love to do. And I think researching financial products is not something that people generally love to do. So you really want to keep it simple so that you don't have to worry so much about stuff. There are a lot of new things out there in the market, but it's really optional. If you can't get the basics right, the three basics I spoke about, there really is no need to go and explore more exotic or more trendy things, because if you don't have the foundation right, basically you're not setting yourself up for success. But let's say you do, right? So say you do set yourself up for success, and like you mentioned, there are a lot of new things. I would always say do a lot of research and make sure you understand it. And a great way to make sure you understand the thing that you're either looking to learn more about is, can you explain it to a very young kid? Can you explain it to a 15-year-old? And if you can, it probably means that you don't understand what it is that you're going to. And for financial products, financial mistakes are very costly. So it is better to kind of over-invest and over-learn rather than under-learn. But then again, not a lot of people have time for this. So again, I would say it's a balance between what do you want to do with your time. You don't need to do a lot to be financially literate. That's what I'm trying to say. I think a lot of people think it has to be complicated. You have to, learn so many things, but actually you really don't. Just follow the three things that I mentioned, and on average, you'll be good. Of course, you can optimize for better things in life, but keeping it simple is probably one of the most overlooked things. So that's what I would really go back to say is, keep it simple. This is tried and tested and has worked for many people over a long span of time. So, many people before you have tried this and it has worked. So, why reinvent the wheel? Just do what works. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I also have another question. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about butterfly FX. And I've heard of your setup before, but I also just realized that you call it butterfly FX versus butterfly effect, and then how some, small, small actions now can lead to like great results in the future. And, FX obviously, financial, like great name. And can you also talk a little bit about your startup and kind of like what it does? And also, can you talk about sort of like the social enterprise aspect of that? So I think now in this kind of like day and age, we want our students and we want, I think society to think not just about making money, but how we can use, these sort of like financial tools, or we can use like whatever we have to also like, make sure we can make a living, but also try to make the world a better place. So if you could tell us more about that, that'd be great.
So Butterfly FX is a financial education platform, and we target vulnerable communities. So we work with migrant workers, refugees, B40 entrepreneurs, and single women entrepreneurs. And what we do is we basically give them the very simple financial skills that they need to be able to, that time portion, allow them to earn more money, basically. And reduce the number of financial mistakes. And we do that through storytelling. So we produce video animations. And this is where I actually learned this in school, which I still use it until now, which is like this video editing skill. So I use video to basically explain financial concepts in an easier way to an audience that generally doesn't have much time. And we deliver this digitally, and we work with a lot of NGOs and impact organizations to deliver this training content to vulnerable communities. So that's Butterfly FX. That's what we do. The social aspect of it is it's not an NGO, so we don't function on donations. We do actually charge for the service that we provide. And with that money that we get, we channel it back into the product. And we give the product to vulnerable communities, like I mentioned, and that's kind of the social piece. And the reason why I started it was because when I was working in Bank Negara, and when I did a lot of volunteer work growing up, you see that if only I wish some people knew very basic financial concepts earlier, they would have made very different choices in their lives. So, but the problem is there's so much out there. It seems so complicated. So we make it very simple. And we do it in a storytelling manner with cartoons. It's usually the easiest way to explain things. So that's really the startup part and the social enterprise part of it.
Okay, fantastic. And I think that what's really nice to hear is really this idea that the skills that you build at Cempaka and sort of like in your youth can really become, not just marketable and can help you to monetize, but they're really sort of like really crucial skills into building both, sort of like who you are, what, your identity is, and also sort of like how you can really sort of like impact the world and also make money for yourself and make a fulfilled living. So I think that's really great. And I love how you talk about, how all these things, they're just small habits, right? So there's small habits of like saving a little bit, but also making sure that you save every month, making it automatic. So the idea of like those automatic habits that are just sort of happening in the background, so you can devote your time and your energy towards more like fruitful endeavors or money. Yeah, I think that's really like incredible and really important for our students and for young people as well. We're kind of running out of time, so if you have, I think there are a lot of teachers here, like Sheikh Zainab, Puan Farah, as well as Mrs. Ganesh, who sort of like popped on to tell you they're all very proud of you and they're all very impressed. And thank you so much for all the financial information and tips. Do you have anything that you would just sort of like to say to kind of like finish the session before we leave?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And hi to all my previous teachers. Obviously, I have so much gratitude, and I think my school years were super formative for me. So I think I would just end by saying, for people in school, really make the best use out of it. I think being in Cempaka is already, like one step up, because you have access to so many things that happen in the school that other kids in other schools don't. So definitely take advantage of that the best way possible. Do a lot of things outside the classroom. Personally, that helped me a lot in getting scholarships, going to good universities, and also eventually having the confidence to start my own startup. A lot of that comes from the confidence I built in school. So I would say, yeah, definitely use what you have in Cempaka, because you don't get this time again once you graduate from high school.
Okay, yeah, although sometimes you can come back and help, and you can come back and share all your knowledge, and that's really, really great. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who tuned in as well. We will have this up, so so this will continue to be on our webinar page. So if anybody wants to go back to Marisha's really great presentation, just, you can do that. So use this sort of keep this, come back to it every maybe a couple of months, and you'll find that I think different things will stick out to you depending on where you are in your financial journey as well. And I think that's also something you need to remember, that this is all kind of a journey, and you may not have the skills or the talents yet, but these are things that you can build in order to better serve you and your community in the future. So with that, thank you so much, Marisha. So good to see you. Okay, and yeah, thanks again, and please stay safe in Luxembourg. Well, and come check back in with us the next time you're home. Okay, we'd love to see you.
Thank you so much, everybody, and stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.